Did everybody get a copy of the instructions for the book reviews to the end of the semester? This is the third time I've been hawking these, which means that you people have missed 2 times. Let's see, who else was there? Anybody back here? Okay. Okay, we turn our attention back today to Whitehead. And I want to concentrate particularly on Whitehead's conception of God. But in order to do that, we have to have some understanding of his overall philosophical scheme, particularly his metaphysics. Because it goes without saying, I suppose, that how one conceives of God and God's relationship to nature is really going to be dependent on the metaphysical scheme. The God concept is system dependent in that sense. The God concept is system dependent. Yeah, because how you conceive of God in relationship to nature depends on how you conceive of nature. Quite obviously so. And last time we were introducing Whitehead. And I was emphasizing the fact that for Whitehead, the basic constituents of all reality are not substances with an enduring, unchanging identity, but rather events. Events can be very momentary, like 1/50th of a second in duration. 1/50th of a second is pretty small. He tends to call those tiny events actual occasions. And reserves the word event and sometimes the word entity, actual entities, for the more large-scale events. But whether you're talking of the micro-events or more maxi-events, like this class period, or your college education, or the history of the United States, you see, each of those is an event of a different size, a different duration. No matter what the event you're talking about, all events can be described in terms of 3 constituent elements, 3 factors. And as we indicated last time, these 3 factors are the objective data, which really amount to the causes, the efficient causes, if you like. Objective data, eternal possibilities, and the decision. And I repeat this simply because it's so very important to understand it. So that if you conceive of a process going along, what initiates a new event? Well, what initiates the new event is the intersection of 2 processes. So that the objective data of this second process intersect with the existing states of affairs in the first process. So that at that point of intersection, there are objective data that are going to make a difference. You say that's a cause-effect mechanism. Yeah. And inasmuch as the basic model for all of these post-Kant things are human consciousness, in human consciousness, we would say that the objective data we're aware of them through what he calls physical prehension. Prehension, of course, is a Leibniz term. It's the shortened version of apprehension, or if you like, comprehension. But to prehend something is simply to accept it, to be aware of it, for it to affect you. He points out that there can be positive and negative prehension. Positive prehension, where you accept the influence and you absorb it. Negative prehension, where you simply reject it, ignore it, turn away from it, you see. But the new event, by virtue of objective data, that are physically prehended, and that is an affective kind of experience, not a cognitive experience, an affective experience. So he criticizes the representational theories of knowledge in people like Descartes and Locke and Berkeley and Kant by saying that they give primacy to the cognitive, primacy to the concept, to the idea. But the first initiating thing in a perceptual experience, in a perceptual event, is not the idea, but the causal stimulus. The affective, not the cognitive. And that perceptual experience is the paradigm for all events of all other sorts. So that even in unconscious beings, there is a low-grade equivalent to physical prehension, namely the cause-effect mechanism. So, physical prehension. Eternal possibilities are simply abstract, logical possibilities, which are, if you like, brought to bear by virtue of the objective data. What's going to be the effect of this objective data, of this new experience? Well, it could go various ways, alternative possibilities, you see. And those eternal possibilities in conscious experience, of course, are ideas, which are apprehended by what he calls conceptual prehension, which plainly is cognitive. So the idea is not the primary thing, as it was for Descartes and Locke, Kant, as if in experience you're just bombarded with ideas. No, Hume was more on target. It's forceful and vivacious impressions, and the ideas follow. It's the affective first rather than the cognitive. So you have eternal possibilities. He recognizes that if they're logical possibilities, they're sort of objective logical possibilities. That is to say, in the very nature of things, there are these logical possibilities. They're not something we invent. We don't invent possibilities. We may actualize possibilities, but we don't invent the possibilities. We may recognize the possibilities, but we don't create them. So in that sense, the possibilities are there whether we know it or not. They're objective possibilities. And so you find him in his later writings especially calling these eternal objects, meaning they're objects of thought, like ideas are objects for Locke. You see, they're objects of thought, objective possibilities that you become aware of. So then, in response to this causal stimulus of the objective data, there arise all sorts of possibilities which in conscious processes we're aware of, in unconscious processes are still there. You see, there are still those possibilities, whether there's anybody to know what they are or not. And from those possibilities, what determines the future is what he calls the decision. In human consciousness, it's often a conscious decision. This is what I'm going to do with the new givens. Conscious decision. But even in unconscious processes, biological, physical, so forth, there's a cutoff point, a selectivity that's involved, where not all of the possibilities can be actualized, and so some are in the natural course of events. You see? This decision is what provides what he calls a subjective aim. Because in the decision, the possibility which is selective becomes the goal at which you aim. That's what you're going to go for. You're going to actualize that possibility. You see. Now, the initial subjective aim is that which is presented by the natural causal process. That is to say, given these outcome. And in any process that's determined, then the initial subjective aim is simply the subjective aim of this new event. Subjective in the sense that it becomes some intrinsic end for the new event by virtue of the new data which have been absorbed into it. You see? It's intrinsic. Notice he's got a teleological explanation of everything. A teleological explanation. It's not a mechanistic universe, it's a teleological one. Now, in the case of beings with consciousness, that initial subjective aim can become a modified subjective aim. A modified subjective aim. So that you might resist the effect of something upon you and handle the new input in some other way. And of course, even your pet dog resists your call, your whistle at times, and goes chasing after the cat next door. You see? The initial subjective aim becomes a modified subjective aim when it smells the cat. I always think dogs smell before they look. You know, the motto, look before you leap, would apply very well to dogs in that sense. Some human beings, I think, leap before they look. Dogs smell before they look, and so forth. But the look can provide a modified subjective aim. So forth. So the initial and the modified subjective aim. So this is the way it is for all events. And as I said last time, there's a gradualism, so that in varying degrees, this is conscious or unconscious, across the whole range of things in heaven and earth. You see. Now, the notion of a subjective aim is teleological. Where does that lead? Well, that leads to the completion of the event. You see. When the possibility inherent in this new data is achieved.